we have 2 years to prepare for the change that's going to happen, and I'm not really sure how one does prepare for the change that's about to happen, but the change, as far as I know, unless these rich white men change their mind, the change is the diagnosis for Asperger syndrome will be gone and it will be lumped into autism. And I have questions for the autistic community, but I also have questions for those that are professionals that have been working with children and adults with autism, and specifically with children and adults with Asperger syndrome. And, you know, what's going to happen to children that were born before, say, uh, 2009 or 2010? If they were born in 2010, they'd be one now. I guess you could receive a diagnosis of AS at 1 year old. I'm not really sure, but what's going to happen with that early intervention and the distinction between being able to with the motor delays and the speaking, because a classic autism, you have separate different classifications, different needs that need to be met for that diagnosis. And it's totally different for Asperger syndrome. You know, there's social impairments in both, but with the Asperger syndrome, there's no delays in language or cognitive abilities. And Asperger syndrome is considered a high functioning autism. I've seen children with a low functioning autism, and many of them don't speak. They're in their own little world and they play with their toys, and that's different from children with Asperger syndrome. And they, a lot of times children with AS, they can speak a lot about their favorite topic and go on and on and on about it. Not so in classic autism. What's going to happen to all these children with a diagnosis of Asperger syndrome? What's going to happen to them in the year 2013 when they go back to their psychiatrist? Is their psychiatrist going to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't help you anymore because, according to this, now you just have autism"? And I mean, think of the confusion it's going to create in the moms and the dads and the grandparents of the children and adults that have Asperger syndrome. And it's going to be poof, gone like a vanishing genie. Now you have it, now you don't. What the fuck is that? It's either you have it or you don't. You can't just say, diagnose them one day with this, and then 2 years later, no, you don't have it anymore because these rich white men decided not to put it in the book and decided to lump it with autism. You can't do that. You cannot do that. That's like saying major depressive disorder is the same thing as bipolar. It's not, because in bipolar you have manic episodes. It's not the same thing. You can't do that. That's like saying red is the same color as blue. Or if you have two crayons and you have a red crayon and a blue crayon, they might still be crayons. Children might still use them, or adults. You might use them to color something, but they're two different colors. They're two different hues. And you can't do that with a diagnosis. You can't just say, "Oh, it's gone now. Oh, it's gone." Because it's a real thing. Those criteria that need to be met is a real thing. And what's going to happen to the adults? What's going to happen to people like me that can't get a diagnosis of AS because they don't have any money for it? What's going to happen to those that are specializing in Asperger syndrome? Like Tony Atwood. He doesn't practice in the United States. He practices in Australia. But say he did. What in the hell would he do if that was no longer a diagnosis and it's going to be lumped under autism? Are there going to be books written about Asperger syndrome? I certainly hope so. I certainly hope people will still be writing about Asperger syndrome when the year 2013 comes, even though these rich white men don't want it in the book. They don't want that diagnosis in the book anymore, and they're going to eliminate it. It's going to be totally fucking gone. Totally gone. Vanished. How can one do that? It's going to create confusion in the whole entire community. And people like me I won't even have a chance of getting a diagnosis. If it's gone, if it's not in the book, I mean, I might as well just give up. I mean, unless I can get a diagnosis between now and, the very last day of, 2012 or whenever it comes out in the year 2013. I don't know when it's going to come out in 2013, but what's the point? There are specific criteria that needs to be met for AS. I cannot stress this enough, and it's not the exact same thing as classic autism. And I don't understand how these editors of the DSM-4 on this board can do this. I'm sure if they had someone in their family, someone very close to them that had AS, I think they would think different. And I'd really like to know what's going to happen to the professionals out there that have, been working with this population for 20 or 30 years. What is going to happen? Can they diagnose? Will they be legally, ethically, legally able to diagnose someone with Asperger syndrome, even though they're using a DSM-V? Will they be able to diagnose someone with Asperger syndrome using the DSM-4, even though the DSM-V is out? I don't know. I would think that it's somehow regulated or something. I don't know. How in the world are they going to be able to diagnose someone with that if there's no, funding for it or anything like that? I don't know. It's something I need to research. I'm sorry. I think this is a very unwise move from these rich white men. They don't know what they're talking about. They have no idea what it's like to have AS. And if they did, they wouldn't remove it from the DSM-4. They would not remove it in there. They would leave it in there, leave it like it is. Just leave it alone. Just leave it alone. And I'm hoping that this doesn't happen, but I haven't done enough research on it. I did about 8-10 months ago read up on that it's going to be changed, but that was 2010. Maybe they changed their mind. Maybe they thought this is going to cost too much. And it's going to be what is the? I haven't even talked about cost. Money cost. I haven't even talked about that. I'm just thinking of the stress, the emotional stress it's going to cause, the confusion it's going to cause in the whole entire community, not just for people with AS, but their parents, their brothers, their sisters, their grandparents, their professionals. This is going to affect everyone. This is going to affect the entire professional, mental health professional, and neurological area too. It's gonna create waves. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. 2 years. How does one prepare for that kind of shit? I don't know. I'd like to know.